Hey there, in this video, I'm going to talk about the relationship between hearing and your posture, your movement, all kinds of things. I'm going to be running through the themes that are going to be part of the Expand Your World class in November. Our theme is on the primacy of hearing, and that title is borrowed from an essay by Moshe Feldenkrais, of course, the creator of the Feldenkrais method. The Expand Your World class involves awareness through movement lessons in the tradition of Feldenkrais, but also a relational practice that I call embodied dialogue, where we read together the words of different thinkers who bring up ideas related to the theme of the class, in this case on the primacy of hearing. But it's the relational practice is also just that. It's us relating to each other. So when we look at hearing in these classes, not only will we do somatic explorations where we work with our hearing and how it relates to our posture, our movement, our overall experience, but we will also engage in dialogue, and we will be observing and very intentionally experimenting with how we are relating to each other and what that has to do with our capacity for hearing, using our ears, and really how do we listen through our whole body. So what I'd like to do, as I've done before, is I'm going to present in this video the different inspiration in the form of words that are going to be discussed in each of the classes. And these videos have gotten a little bit long because there's a lot to say. So I'm actually going to make two videos. I'm just going to talk about the first two classes in the series in this video, and then I'll do a part two. So of course, you're invited to enroll in the class, and there'll be information below the video about how you can do that. But whether or not you participate in the class, I hope you will find this discussion about the relationship between your hearing and other things you do to be valuable. So let's go ahead and take a look. I'm going to share my screen here. So our first class is on the theme of when hearing becomes listening. So we use those words together a lot, but hearing and listening are not the same thing. And let's just look at our first quotation from Heinrich Jacobi. He says, "We do not possess any special musculature for hearing or seeing, whose nerve endings can contribute to light or sound reaching us." So he's talking about something that's also true of our vision. But when we want to hear something, if we tell someone to listen up, it's like try harder to listen. But in fact, trying makes it harder to listen. And in particular, what we'll find out in this class and we'll experience is that the musculature in and around your ears, when you contract it, it actually makes it harder for sound to get in. And of course, that's useful if there's a really loud sound that you want to protect yourself from, you will contract there. But that contraction makes it harder to hear. So when you really want to be able to hear well, you want your ears to be open. Now, another way that the contraction and relaxation of these muscles comes into play is when you listen to something that's far, far away versus something that's very close to you. Because if something's closer, it may in fact be louder, right? But there's a way that you kind of, just the way you focus your eyes at a distance or up close, you do something also with your ears. So we will experience that in the class. Here's another quotation from the first class. "Removing the armor implies broadening and deepening the focus of listening, and giving up trying to hear along with trying not to hear. Instead of effort, which produces tension, which makes us less resonant, there is opening and allowing oneself to be moved." So again, same idea, the importance of being open, of not using effort, which, as Kate says, it produces tension and we become less resonant, right? Because how does sound occur? It occurs through vibration. And if things are tense in the space that we want to vibrate, it dampens the vibration and we don't get as much resonance. Here he says removing the armor, he's talking about like a sense of emotional armor, right? So if we're stressed out, we might find it's harder to listen and really be available to someone who's speaking to us. So this begins to show us how this affects how we're relating with each other as well. And then there's another quote also from David Cates. Sound is encountered as movement in space, as something that touches the body and moves through it. One learns to allow this sound massage rather than straining, either to grasp it or to defend oneself against it. So similar idea there. The basic theme in that first class is that the difference between hearing, which we might just say it's happening all the time, the ears being open, and listening, well, it has something to do with our attention, right? If I'm actually paying attention to what you're saying, I'm more likely to really hear it. But if I'm not paying attention, sure, sound comes in because the ears are in a sense always open. But what we'll discover as we start to play with how the ears can actually sort of open and close through the use of the musculature is that we may find that when we're not thinking about it, our habit is to be a little more open or a little more closed. This is just the same thing as we might realize that when we're standing, we tend to put our weight over one leg. So you might in fact have ears, you might have a difference between your two ears. One of your ears tends to be more open or more closed than the other. Same thing as might be the case with your eyes. You already probably know that if you see better out of one eye, you would favor that eye. You might sort of tend to move through life like this so that you could put one eye, sorry, I always get confused gesturing on a Zoom screen. Anyway, you turn the eye that really sees well more to the front and it changes your posture. The same way, if you imagine a loud sound in this ear and I'm kind of going like that, I want to close there and I don't want to hear it, where I'm exaggerating here, but I'm changing the position of my head, just those little contractions. So we'll start to notice how our habits with our ears actually affect our posture, even when we're not thinking about listening and hearing. We're just standing, one ear may be more open or closed than the other, and that might be changing our posture. Okay, so let's look at the themes for class number 2 in this series. So the second class is called Balancing Attention Between Mind and Environment. And what I can say about this is, as the general idea is that if you think of your mind as being inside, like inside your head, and there's plenty of arguments to locate the mind outside the head as well. But let's just say for the moment, we think of our thinking as something that happens internally. And then the environment, of course, is what's out there. Well, then how much of the environment do I hear? And how much of these thoughts in my head do I hear? For most of us, thinking is actually kind of an auditory experience. So throughout the day, oh yeah, I should go to the store, I'm running out of milk. Well, I might actually be sort of saying those words in my head. I might be hearing those words in my head. In fact, there's even a chance that sometimes the musculature of my mouth and my whole vocal apparatus might be subtly coming into play. But in any case, if there are words in my head that appear as a sound, well, if there's other sound around me, if I'm walking outside and there's the wind and the birds and the cars driving around, the degree that I'm able to hear the outside sound also depends on how loud is the sound on the inside. Okay, so let's look at the quotations. Every sound is born out of silence, dies back into silence, and during its lifespan is surrounded by silence. Silence enables the sound to be. So sound and silence obviously are in a relationship. And as I was saying, if there is sound taking place, while that sound is taking place, it takes the place of silence. But if those words in my head that I keep saying to myself, if they quiet down, if they are a little more silent, right, then there's more availability to listen to other things. Silence enables the sound to be. Here's a quotation from Moshe Feldenkrais, and it starts to get at the kinds of things that go on in our head when we're we're thinking. It is an illusion if the person, while he is listening, while he is thinking and looking, he is judging at the same time, saying, this is good, this is not good, that's it, that is not it. At this precise moment, he interrupts the ability of his awareness to see clearly and correctly. So here, the interruption isn't merely that thinking might make a sound, but that by calling things that we do good or bad, we start to sort of narrow down the possibility of what they are. And in particular, we will be noticing the relationship of our emotional state and our sort of sense of how we are doing, this assessment that we're often making of ourselves, good or bad, and how it relates to our attention span. So often, if I'm sort of frustrated, this is not going well, damn it, it tends to speed me up, right? And it tends to make me want to add more effort, which, as we looked at earlier when talking about the first class, effort tends to interrupt the hearing. At the same time, if I say this is good, this is great, I might actually just sort of go a little lax in my attention, just thinking like everything's, the way it should be. I don't have to change anything here. So maybe a non-judgmental space is, again, more just a sense of being open. What's important here too is what is your attention span? Can you pay attention for 5 seconds? Can you pay attention for 10 seconds? Can you pay attention for an hour, right? If you're willing to wait and continue to pay attention over a longer space of time, something that might seem to be unresolved or it's not working right now, it has more time to unfold. And if you can be open and be present for a longer period of time, you have more of an opportunity to observe that process. And this is also going to relate to the quality of your movement and the quality of your relating to other people. Quote from Seth Godin starts to sort of come together these different questions of the noise in our head and what that noise is saying. The monologue that runs in our brain is loud. It's heavy metal loud compared to the quiet signals we get from the rest of the world. All day, every day, that noise keeps going. It's the only voice that has seen everything we've seen, believes everything we believe. It's the noise that not only criticizes every action of every other person who disagrees with us, but it criticizes their motives as well. And if we question it, it criticizes us as well. Okay, so that last quotation from Seth Godin comes from a longer blog post. I believe the title is the Noise in My Head Bothering You?, which is really worth a read. He's getting at really the relational aspect too of that noise in our head. So we tend to have this monologue, it tends to drown out the outside world, and it tends to be judgmental, both of other people and of us. So not only do I have this problem of maybe I'm judging myself, but if I'm judging the person in front of me, again, I'm creating something in the space between us that makes it harder for me to actually see them as they are. He talks about criticizing someone's motives. Well, often we don't really even know what someone's motives are, and we make an assumption. So here I'm assuming your motives are a particular thing. I'm judgmental about that, and I've put all this stuff into the space between you and I before we even really have a clear interaction. So again, it closes things down and it makes relationship more difficult. So that's a sense for you of some of the ways that your hearing and your capacity for listening, in other words, paying attention to what you hear and being intentional about the use of your ears. And really, when Feldenkrais, for example, he talked about listening and he said, if you're listening but you're judging, you're making a mistake. He's often using listening as a term that doesn't just relate to the ears, but it's like listening. He's often talking about a somatic listening where you're listening to the body. I remember in my Feldenkrais training, I was introduced to the idea that I could listen to my shoulder blades, for example, to feel what's going on. It's like this listening in. But again, if I'm judging myself, that gets in the way. Anyways, all of these kind of ideas that I've just been going through, They are going to be things that we discuss together. We're going to be reading these words aloud to each other, and the actual reading, the making of sound, and the listening to actual sound of the words. Not only will we talk about what the words mean, but the actual shape of the words and how it strikes our ears, the rhythm, the musical nature of the words, that also comes into our class. And there's something about this idea of musicality that also comes into how we relate to each other. And that's going to be something that we get to a little more in the last couple of classes during this series. And I'll also talk about in part 2 of this video. But I'll wrap this video up right here. And once both videos are available, I'll link the two, so you can look below if you want to continue on and watch part 2 after this one. And once again, I hope you'll consider joining the class. It's an ongoing class series called Expand Your World, with a new theme every month. And this month, again, the theme is on the primacy of hearing. Okay, thanks for listening.